In the turbulent landscape of the 20th century, a century defined by world wars, Cold War anxieties, and profound cultural upheaval, one voice rose above the noise. A voice that was at once thunderous and comforting, speaking of sin and salvation to a world hungry for answers. That voice belonged to a tall, charismatic farm boy from North Carolina named Billy Graham. He wasn't just a preacher, he was a global phenomenon. For more than 6 decades, he was America's pastor, a spiritual advisor to a dozen U.S. presidents from Truman to Obama. He was a pioneer of mass evangelism, transforming the humble tent revival into a global crusade, filling stadiums from London to Seoul with hundreds of thousands of souls. He harnessed the power of radio, television, and film with a savvy that no religious leader had before preaching the Christian gospel to an estimated 2.2 billion people, more than anyone in the history of humankind. His ministry, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, became a massive multi-million-dollar global enterprise. He was a man of immense influence, a figure who walked with kings and queens. Yet he maintained an image of personal piety and humility, famously instituting a strict code of conduct to avoid any hint of financial or sexual scandal. But behind the global icon, behind the man who belonged to the world, there was a family. A family anchored by his brilliant, fiercely independent, and adventurous wife, Ruth Graham, the daughter of missionaries who was his intellectual and spiritual partner. And together, in the quiet mountains of Montreat, North Carolina, they raised 5 children. They were PK's preacher's kids on the grandest, most public scale imaginable. They grew up in the shadow of a spiritual giant, a father who was often absent for months, even years at a time, answering a call that took him to the far corners of the earth. He was a global icon of Christian faith and moral certainty. But in his own family, his 5 children wrestled with divorce addiction, doubt, public rebellion, and the crushing, soul-shaping pressure of a famous last name. What is the untold, deeply human story of Billy Graham's 5 children? Tone shifts to that of a guide promising a deep and unflinching exploration. In this video, we will tell the complete, deeply personal, and often surprising stories of Gigi and Ruth Franklin and Ned, the 5 children of the Reverend Billy Graham and the remarkable Ruth Graham. Raised in the shadow of a spiritual giant, each of them had to forge their own path, leading to lives of incredible ministry, public controversy, private heartbreak, and profound redemption. We will explore the life of Virginia Gigi Graham, the dutiful eldest daughter who became a prolific author, and the family's gentle, stabilizing diplomat. We will delve into the powerful ministry of Graham Lotz, the gifted preacher often called the best preacher in the family, who broke barriers for women in the male-dominated world of evangelism. We will uncover the painful and inspiring journey of Ruth Graham, the prodigal daughter, whose life of repeated divorce, clinical depression, and struggle became a powerful and unexpected testament to grace in the midst of brokenness. We will examine the explosive story of Franklin Graham, the rebellious motorcycle-riding prodigal son who experienced a dramatic conversion, took over his father's global empire, and transformed it into a powerful and deeply controversial political force. And we will tell the quiet story of Nelson Ned Graham, the youngest son who battled his own demons with addiction and took the family's mission to the other side of the world, building a legacy in the shadows of the Far East. To bring you this incredible saga of faith and family, we have gone deep into the archives of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. We have read the candid and often conflicting memoirs and biographies written by the children themselves, and chronicled their decades of public ministry and their very private struggles. This is the story of America's most famous spiritual dynasty. Number 5. Virginia Gigi Graham, the diplomat of the dynasty. As the eldest, she was the first to navigate the strange and demanding world of being Billy Graham's daughter, the first to experience a life lived under a microscope with a beloved father who was rarely home. Her life would be one of quiet devotion, not on the crusade stage, but through the written word, and a gentle spirit becoming the family's stabilizing ambassador to a curious world. This is the story of Virginia Gigi Graham. Born in 1945, Virginia Graham, known to all as Gigi, was the firstborn of Billy and Ruth. Her early years were defined by her father's meteoric rise from a traveling preacher to a national figure. While he was holding his famous 1949 Los Angeles crusade, the event that launched him into superstardom, Gigi was a small child back home, in their log cabin in Montreat, North Carolina. Her life and the lives of her siblings to come would be raised largely by her fiercely independent and brilliant mother, Ruth. Ruth Belle Graham, the daughter of missionaries to China, was the anchor of the family. While Billy was away often for months, even years at a time, it was Ruth who provided the stability, the discipline, and the intellectual and spiritual foundation for the children. Gigi's earliest memories were of a father who was a powerful but distant figure. His presence often felt more through letters and phone calls than in person. She experienced the strange duality of being a preacher's kid on a global scale. On one hand, life was simple and disciplined in the mountains of North Carolina. On the other, she would occasionally be pulled into her father's orbit of presidents, queens, and celebrities. Gigi learned early on how to navigate these two vastly different worlds with grace and poise. Unlike some of her more fiery and outspoken younger siblings, Gigi developed a gentle, diplomatic, and steady personality. She attended Wheaton College in Illinois, her parents' alma mater, a place deeply significant in the family's history. Soon after, she married a Swiss-born psychologist, Stefan Chivigian. Together, they embarked on the immense journey of raising a large family of 7 children. Gigi found her own ministry not on a grand international stage, but through the intimate and powerful medium of writing. She has become a prolific and beloved author of over a dozen Christian books, primarily aimed at women, mothers, and families. Her works with titles like A Quiet Heart, Mothers Together, and Passing It On are filled with practical wisdom, personal anecdotes about her unique upbringing, and a deep abiding faith. Through her writing, she has connected with millions of readers, offering a softer, more relational approach to the Christian life than her father's powerful, authoritative stadium sermons. She has also been a sought-after public speaker, sharing her experiences of growing up Graham with audiences around the world. In the family's more turbulent moments during public controversies or private heartbreaks, Gigi has often been a calming, unifying, and diplomatic presence. Her story is one of quiet, steadfast faith. It is a life dedicated to family and to sharing her experiences through the written word. It represents a different but equally valid way of carrying the Graham legacy, not through thunderous proclamation, but through gentle, consistent, and loving counsel. While Gigi's ministry was gentle and literary, her younger sister would inherit their father's commanding presence and his thunderous prophetic voice. She would become a world-renowned evangelist in her own right and in the eyes of many, including her father, his true spiritual heir. Number 4. Graham Lotz, the Prophetess, her own father. Billy Graham famously and publicly called her the best preacher in the family. In a world of male-dominated patriarchal evangelism, how did Graham Lotz break through every barrier to become one of the most powerful and respected female Bible teachers in the world, carrying her father's spiritual fire to a new generation born in 1948? Anne was the second daughter, and from a very early age, it was clear she possessed a special and formidable spiritual gift. She had her father's charisma, his commanding stage presence, and his profound, almost intuitive ability to interpret and communicate the scriptures with a power and clarity that was arresting. She married a successful dentist, Dr. Danny Lotz, and for a time settled into a conventional life, raising 3 children in Raleigh, North Carolina. But she felt a deep, undeniable, and almost restless calling to teach the Bible. In 1976, she was asked to lead a small Bible study class for 12 women. She agreed. This small class exploded in popularity. Her dynamic, insightful, and powerful teaching style was a revelation. Within a decade, this weekly class called Bible Study Fellowship was attracting thousands of attendees, with women driving from hours away to hear her speak. In 1988, she incorporated this ministry as Angel Ministries, the name an acronym for Graham Lotz. It was a nonprofit organization that would take her teaching to a global audience through books, radio programs, and large-scale revival-style events she called Just Give Me Jesus. Her path was not easy. As a woman, her desire to preach and teach was met with resistance and sometimes outright hostility from the more conservative corners of the evangelical world. But her undeniable gift and her famous last name opened doors that were closed to other women. She became a sought-after speaker, preaching in arenas around the world from the United States to Korea and Brazil. Her style is powerful, direct, and uncompromisingly rooted in Scripture, earning her the nickname, the female Billy Graham. Anne's life has also been marked by profound personal suffering, which she believes has deepened her ministry. In 2015, her husband of 49 years, Danny, died tragically in their home pool. In the years that followed, she battled and survived a serious bout with breast cancer. She has been open, honest, and incredibly vulnerable about her grief and her health struggles, using her own pain to connect with her audience on a deeper, more human level, and to testify to her faith in the midst of suffering. While her brother Franklin would inherit the institutional empire of the BGEA, many observers, including Billy Graham himself, believed it was Anne who inherited the purest form of his preaching gift. Her story is one of a woman who defied convention and broke barriers to answer a powerful spiritual calling, becoming one of the most influential voices in the modern evangelical world. Anne's life has been a story of unwavering, powerful faith. Her younger sister Ruth, however, would embark on a very different and much more painful public journey, one that would take her far from the perfect image of the Graham family into a world of heartbreak and brokenness before finding her way back in the most unexpected way. Number 3. Ruth Graham, the Prodigal Daughter. In a family that stood as a global symbol of moral perfection and Christian stability, her life was messy, complicated, and broken. She was the one who didn't fit. This is the prodigal story of Ruth Graham. The daughter who got divorced repeatedly, suffered from clinical depression, and watched her own children battle addiction. Her journey would ultimately show the world that even a Graham could be in desperate public need of grace. Born in 1950, Ruth was the third daughter named for her remarkable, strong-willed mother. She grew up as a spirited and sensitive child in the famous family. But as a young adult, her life took a series of turns that deviated sharply from the carefully prescribed path. Her story is one she has courageously and openly shared with the world as a central part of her life's work. She married young and had 3 children, but the marriage ended in divorce. For the daughter of Billy Graham, this was a source of immense shame and a sense of personal failure. She would go on to marry and divorce several more times, a series of painful and public heartbreaks. She has been candid about her lifelong struggles with clinical depression, her feelings of inadequacy, and the immense difficulty of navigating these deep personal crises under the crushing weight of the Graham name. At one point, she was in an emotionally abusive relationship and felt she had nowhere to turn, terrified of bringing scandal and shame to her famous father and his global ministry. Her own children, in turn, also faced their own serious, life-threatening struggles with drug addiction, a parent's worst nightmare. Ruth's life was a world away from the perfect Christian family image her father's ministry had projected for decades. But it was in this very brokenness that Ruth found her own unique and profoundly powerful ministry. After years of feeling like an outcast, a failure, the black sheep of the family, she embraced her story not as a source of shame, but as a testimony to God's relentless grace in the midst of human messiness. She founded her own ministry, Ruth Graham and Friends, which focuses specifically on providing resources, conferences, and support for those who feel marginalized, wounded, or broken both inside and outside the church. She has written powerful, deeply honest books with titles that speak for themselves, such as "In Every Pew Sits a Broken Heart" and "Fear is Not a Four-Letter Word." She speaks with a raw, disarming vulnerability about her divorces, her children's addictions, and her own struggles with depression. In doing so, she is connected with a vast and often overlooked audience of people who feel they don't fit the mold of the perfect Christian. She has become a powerful voice for the wounded, a living testament to the idea that faith is not about maintaining a flawless exterior, but about finding grace and healing in our deepest imperfections. Her story, the story of the Prodigal Daughter, has become one of the most powerful, authentic, and relatable ministries in the entire Graham family. Ruth's journey was a painful personal path to grace. Her younger brother, Franklin, was also a prodigal son, a rebellious, wild child who ran from his father's calling. But his eventual return to the faith would not lead to a quiet ministry for the broken. It would lead to a thunderous, powerful takeover of his father's empire and a head-on collision with the world of American politics. Number 2. Franklin Graham, the Crusader King. He was the rebellious motorcycle-riding prodigal son who was kicked out of school and seemed destined for a life of trouble and obscurity. So how did Franklin Graham not only return to the faith, but take over his father's global empire and transform it into one of the most powerful, influential, and deeply controversial political forces in modern America? Born in 1952, William Franklin Graham III was the long-awaited son, the heir to the Graham name. But he was anything but the perfect preacher's boy. From a young age, Franklin was a rebel. He loved fast cars, motorcycles, and chasing adventure. He smoked, he drank, and by his own admission, he raised hell. He was kicked out of LeTourneau University for keeping a female classmate out past curfew. For years, he ran from the immense, suffocating expectations that came with being Billy Graham's only son. His life changed forever in 1974. At the age of 22, alone in a hotel room in Jerusalem, reading the Gospel of John, he experienced a dramatic, life-altering conversion, finally committing his life to Christ. But he didn't immediately step into his father's shoes. Instead, he found his own calling through a small, struggling Christian relief organization called Samaritan's Purse, which was founded by a man named Bob Pierce. Under Franklin's aggressive and visionary leadership, Samaritan's Purse grew from a tiny mission into a global humanitarian aid behemoth. It became a multi-billion-dollar organization that provides emergency medical relief food and aid in war zones and disaster areas around the world. As his father aged, the question of succession at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association became urgent. In the mid-1990s, after much family debate and his father's initial reluctance, Franklin was named the heir. He officially took over as CEO in 2001. But Franklin's leadership marked a dramatic and fundamental shift from his father's style. While Billy Graham in his later years became more ecumenical, more focused on unity, and more politically cautious, Franklin was confrontational, dogmatic, and politically aggressive. He became one of the most prominent and powerful voices of the American Christian right. His public statements have been a source of constant and intense controversy. After 9/11, he made highly inflammatory remarks about Islam, calling it a very evil and wicked religion. He has been a fierce and relentless opponent of LGBTQ+ rights. And most significantly, he became one of the earliest and most unwavering evangelical supporters of Donald Trump. A position that has alienated many, but has also solidified his immense power and influence within the Republican Party and its evangelical base. Franklin's story is one of a radical transformation from a prodigal son to a crusading CEO. He has successfully taken control of his father's massive ministry, but in doing so has reshaped it in his own much more combative political and, to his critics, divisive image. While Franklin's ministry became a powerful and often divisive force in American politics, the youngest Graham's son would take the family's mission to the other side of the globe, building a quieter but no less dedicated legacy in the shadows of the Far East. Number 1. Ned Graham, the missionary to the East. While his siblings ministered to America under the full and often harsh glare of the public spotlight, the youngest son, Ned Graham, took the family's mission to the other side of the globe, building a quieter, more focused legacy, all while battling his own significant and very public personal demons. Born in 1958, Nelson Edmund Graham, known as Ned, was the baby of the family. He grew up with a father who was already a global institution. Like his older brother Franklin, Ned had a rebellious streak in his youth, and like his sister Ruth, his life has not been a straight path. In what has become a recurring and courageous theme in the Graham family, Ned has also been open about his own past struggles. He admitted in 2007 to a nearly 20-year addiction to cocaine, a secret he kept hidden for a long time while serving in ministry. This admission led to his resignation from the organization he founded. His journey to sobriety was a long and difficult one. He found his own unique calling not in America, but in Asia. This was a beautiful echo of his own mother's heritage, as Ruth Bell Graham was born and raised in China as the daughter of medical missionaries. In 1990, Ned founded East Gates Ministries International, a ministry focused on serving the church in China. For over 3 decades, he has worked to legally provide Bibles and other Christian materials to the rapidly growing and often persecuted Christian communities in China. His ministry is very different from his father's stadium crusades or his brother's politically charged rallies. It is a quieter, more relational and culturally sensitive form of work. He is focused on building bridges and providing resources, often having to navigate complex and delicate political and cultural landscapes. Ned's story provides a fascinating contrast to his brother Franklin's high-profile, American-centric ministry. It shows a different way to carry the family's global mission, a quieter path of service that is perhaps closer in spirit to the cross-cultural work of his own mother, Ruth Bell Graham. His life is a testament to redemption and a quiet, steadfast dedication to a specific, challenging calling far from the headlines. Together, the lives of the 5 Graham children show 5 very different paths walked in the footsteps of a spiritual giant. A diplomat, a prophetess, a healer, a crusader, and a missionary. Each of them has had to reckon with the immense weight of their father's legacy, and each has found a unique and powerful way to carry or completely redefine his mission for a new generation. This theme of the children of a monumental American historical figure whose legacy continues to shape the nation is something we have explored before on this channel. In a previous video, we examined the fiery and transformative life of Frederick Douglass, a man who escaped the horrors of slavery to become one of the most important abolitionist orators and authors in the nation's history. We explored his brave struggle for freedom and his powerful world-changing impact on the course of American history. You can watch that essential story by clicking the link right here. And his children had to navigate their own complex legacy, living as the children of a black icon in a nation still grappling with the deep wounds and sins of slavery. We are currently developing a deep dive, Frederick Douglass's 5 Children, the Untold Story, to explore that incredible and important chapter of American history. Be sure to subscribe and have hit that notification bell. You will not want to miss it.